There are many things that can threaten our joy in life, but few are more consistently successful, subtle, and surrounding us at every turn than the big C. The big C is there when we watch the weather report and see that it's going to rain, see that it's going to snow in April or rain on the 4th of July. The big C is there when we have to work an unscheduled Saturday. The big C is there when we don't like the taste of our dinner, or a door handle breaks, or a goofy dog heats your computer cord. Too close to home for me. It's easy to find, hard to get away from, and once you get going, you feel like you ought to talk about it more and more. What is the big C? Complaining. There are more flavors of complaint than there are flavors of soft serve ice cream or movies on Disney Plus. So in Paul's writing on how to have joy, he deals urgently and emphatically with the issue of complaining. In Philippians 2:14-15, we read, "Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world." Paul says emphatically that complaining has to be crossed out of our lives. There is no place to gripe about the government and their miscues, nowhere to bemoan our lowly salary for such a hard job, no place to go into crisis about the fact that we had to mow our lawn or paint a bedroom instead of watching the big game, going hunting, or going out on the town. But why not, Paul? Why is it so important not to complain? Paul states the first reason in our text. You are a witness. We shine as lights in the midst of a crooked and twisted people. Paul is confident that if we don't complain about anything and give thanks in all circumstances, then everyone around us will be forced to notice that we are different. And let me assure you, we will look different. When I worked at the factory, everyone around me could find anything to complain about. People complained about the salary, the injuries that they had, the time off that we didn't get, or the time off that we did get that wasn't long enough. People complained about holidays and what they didn't get to do on those holidays. Everywhere was full of complaining. I remember one day in particular sitting at lunch when we were told that we would get a delay and be able to come into work 3 hours late the next day because of a snowstorm. I stated how wonderful it was that we were able to come into work late. The two people sitting at the table with me said, "Well, yeah, but if they were really nice, they wouldn't have made us work at all." And I said, "Well, but at least we also got the weekend off." And they said, "Yeah, but we'll definitely work the next weekend, and maybe even the ones after that." No matter what life was like, there was a way to complain. A person asked me one day why I smiled so much, and he said, "There's no reason to smile all the time." I said, "This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it." Everyone notices a thankful person. The second reason not to complain is we are in danger of not being able to love and enjoy God when we become complainers. We are in danger of not being able to love and enjoy God when we become complainers. Why? Because to complain is not just to complain about a situation and have a bad attitude about it. It's to have a bad attitude towards God himself. There's a story in the Old Testament about God's people who were famous for complaining. They complained about not having water. Then they complained about not having food. Then they complained about not having meat. And then they complained about just about everything. But just complainers, right? Well, God had this to say about the complainers in Psalm 78:17-19. They sinned still more against him, rebelling against the Most High in the desert. They tested God in their heart by demanding the food they craved. They spoke against God, saying, "Can God spread a table in the wilderness?" If we read the story about their complainings were directed towards Moses on the surface. In reality, they were complaining against God. Moses said, "God has heard your grumbling against him. For what are we that you grumble against us? Your grumbling is not against us, but against the Lord." Oh my. To complain is to take issue with God, which will definitely take away our joy. Whenever we complain, we put just one more little wedge between us and seeing God's goodness throughout the day. There is no way we can enjoy someone or something to the fullest when we complain about them and our language says they have not been good enough and should have done a better job making this day a good one. I can guarantee you that if you talk about a loved one or a friend all day and all you do is complain to them or about them, then they will not feel loved, and your love for them will fade. I remember when I first bought my truck and how deeply I loved it. Its red paint, its huge bed with a cover, how I towered over traffic in it, and then it wouldn't start. I replaced one part and then another, and still it wouldn't work. I complained about that truck all the time, and for a few days hated the very sight of it. But the scary thing was the day when I spent the most time working on the truck. I realized that my complaining attitude about that truck made me not only stop loving the truck, but when I got out of the car with the part that didn't fix the problem, I no longer loved the sun above my head, the blue sky, the beautiful home God had given me, and I hadn't heard a word of that inspiring sermon and the songs I had playing on my drive. I was numbed and hit by the big sea. How could I fix it, and how would I find joy again? The same way we all get rid of the big C, a daily dose of a little vitamin called TNJ, thanksgiving and joy. Scripture tells us that the very will of God is to give thanks in all circumstances and rejoice always. Why? Because complaining, just as it grabs hold, once we start taking our old TNJ, we see God's goodness, love, and wisdom everywhere. The more we give thanks, the more we see to be thankful for. And suddenly we love this dear God who has been so kind to us. I remember one day sitting down with a lady who had made a point of not asking God for anything for a whole year and only giving thanks. She had some health struggles and some family issues, but man, she was happy. There were things she could have been worried about. But boy, did she see God as a lot more wonderful than I did. She took her daily TNJ and got rid of the big C. Let's all take our daily dose of TNJ, get rid of the big C's power, and get back to joyful living.